I want to ask you about health. Because you have two children who have autism, right? And visits to the doctors on various things are something that you know well about.
Yeah.
So what's your experience like? Actually, your first experience when you went to a hospital with your child who has autism.
Let's start with before I knew they had autism.
Okay.
Yeah. It used to be, you know, that thing you psychologically prepare. You know there's going to be a doctor's lab coat involved. There's going to be a stethoscope involved. So it used to be 2 people manhandling or 4 people manhandling a small tiny baby just to get her to be even taken a temperature, because to them that was a trigger. And
this time you have not yet known they have
yes,
autism.
like I have a daughter because we had to do her blood test and therefore they pricked her finger. Anytime she sees a white lab coat, she puts her hand here and starts crying. You know, Then there's another one. At a point she used to put things in her ears, so we ended up being at the ENTs. So the other day they had to go to the same hospital for something different. Trust me, she was...
Oh, she went in holding her.
Yes, when she saw that, because the memory is very accurate, yeah? So you can't do something twice. You have to come up with a different trick. Now, post-autism, first thing is the lack of professionals or doctors trained for the different intellectual disabilities. Believe it or not, 2021, the whole of East Africa, yeah, all those 5 countries plus, we have 3 neurodevelopmental pediatricians. 3.
Versus how many children?
I don't even have to give you the numbers, you know the numbers. So what happens is that most of them end up in the care of psychiatrists. Psychiatrists were not trained for neurodevelopmental disabilities. They were trained for mental illnesses. And that already brings in stigma and discrimination of care. And then because of their training, they will end up missing a lot of things. Yeah. My first diagnosis was by a psychiatrist for my children, both of them. But it took us by the time we were able to see a neurodevelopmental pediatrician, because it's also not a cheap service. They're all in the private sector. None of them is in the public service. Things that we had thought we'll never figure out. We come to realize we have other comorbidities that we hadn't caught about. Yeah. Other things that we have to keep on doing. We have to keep on doing some people have to do chirotyping with a very expensive blood test to figure out a few things on their children. Others have to do MRIs to check on the brain functioning and the optal issues. Others have to have their eyes and ears tested so often just to keep abreast onto the changes that are happening. Yeah. Then we have the ones who have physical disability and involve the cerebral issues, have to keep on getting readjusted for. So it becomes a constant thing that you keep doing. You become very familiar with hospitals. Then the way therapy is designed in this country is designed for hospital care. So you want to see an occupational therapist, you have to go to a hospital. You want to see an ABA therapist, you have to go to a hospital. You need to see an occupational therapist, you have to go to a hospital. You need to see a speech therapist, you have to go to a hospital. The unfortunate thing is this. One, the ones available are so few versus the population that needs to do them. So the designed care and therapies are not fitted per person's needs. They're fitted to a group. So you see all the 9-year-olds with autism here. Some of them are ahead, some are behind. So the care is not engineered to that. The other thing is with our kids, because of the way their brains are wired, they tend to associate a hospital with a place where you go to get well. And therefore anything done there should remain there. So if you're teaching my child how to properly hold a pen and you are working for the grip and you do it in hospital, that means when we are done, we leave this in hospital. So when we go home, this is not for hospital.
Yeah. So getting them to use that is difficult.
Yes, when you come home. So we need a point where this healthcare system changes and therapy is given in my daily environment. That is home and school. I have a daughter who understands that school starts outside her door and ends at the end of her door. There's nothing like coming home with homework. That school bag, as far as she's concerned, it's dumped outside the door.
And she's not touching homework?
She's not touching it. We've had this conversation with the teachers. We don't even bother anymore. When she comes home, we do something different. Yeah, but she clearly knows it didn't come from school. Even though it's an activity for school, it didn't come from school. In the morning, if you try to give her that bag in the house, she ain't picking it up. She will step outside and you have to give her the bag outside. Yeah. So Even
I'm
when it
feeling
comes,
like I know who that is.
yeah. So even when it comes to therapy, we have had to go into the extra cost of ensuring it comes home and some of it goes to school. So it is in the right environment. So anything to do with the writing and with this is done at school. Anything to do with washing and it's done at home. Because if you take it to a health center, she will leave it exactly there. So you removed whatever you removed from my ear. So you taught me how to hold this pen using this pencil holder. We ain't taking it past here. So that is what our children is. Again, this is a space whereby I don't even think we still have them. We don't have clinical guidelines on the assessment and care of people with intellectual disability because of either the lack of knowledge or greed, such that they are put together under mental assessments. So a person with psychiatric disorders of schizophrenia and bipolar is being given the same assessment process as somebody who has autism or Down syndrome or CP. And remember, the first two are genetic and can be found earlier. So the assessment is done by the wrong professional. And therefore, a lot of children will drop through. Also, the terminology used in healthcare ends up making some parents not seek the necessary interventions. So when you tell somebody your child has mild delayed milestones, it's like saying amechelewa tu kidogo atakuja. So the parent goes like kidogo, they'll catch up. And then you don't do the necessary interventions. And by the time it sinks to you that the mild was mild for who. And also, you see, when you tell me as a parent mild, I'm going to think it's like a cold. It'll get over in 14 days. But then, is it mild for my child? How do they process the sensory issues? Do we need to train them to exist in a noisy place? Because it's not natural for them. So that then means then we don't. We need to have appropriate language that explains the severity or the importance of paying attention to the necessary interventions, that pays proper attention to what needs to be done. And also, again, we need, within our world of special needs, you cannot separate some things. You cannot separate healthcare from education. Yeah, and you cannot separate them again from functional issues. So there needs to be a seamless multidisciplinary assessment whereby the medical person and the person assessing for education and the person assessing for functionality are in the same space. And even the growing of this child as they meet the milestones or don't meet them, this team is in cohesion. So you have my ideal situation whereby you'd have an assessment would involve you as the parent and every other caregiver that gets involved with your child, including even your house if they are there, the grandparents, the school bus driver if they are there, if the child goes with a school bus driver. You will bring in, because you can't bring all the teachers, you'll bring in the special needs teacher or the shadow teacher or the assistant teacher to this assessment. You'll have a medical doctor, you have the parent, you'll bring in the different therapists, and on top of the medical doctor, maybe if it's a child, the neurodevelopmental pediatrician and a neurologist and any other that you will need in this equation. And you would actually sit and say, so this is where we are and this is where we are doing. And therefore, you'd have individualized plans that are specific for each and every intervention. A specific plan for education, a specific plan for health, a specific plan for therapy, caregiving, interaction, but all of them connected, and that would make the process not only easy on everyone, but it would be multidisciplinary, because as you're growing as a person, you need to grow all around. You need to grow all around, because even some things like learning when is it proper to laugh, those are things we learn by observing.
The social skills.
The social skills. How do we get them across? We all learned that we clap when somebody does well, but here is a child with sensory issues, and clapping is how they cope with everything else. So they'll clap at whatever time suits them and their sensory issues, and not the other. So when it comes to access to health, we need to put the right professions in place. And this is where the government, because they control the training of doctors in this country, they control the training of occupational therapists and the rest, they need to actually know it's no longer time for needs assessment, it's time to fill the needs. It takes 6 years to qualify as a doctor. It takes 14 years to qualify as a neurodevelopmental pediatrician. So we are 14 years behind. For a child born this year, we're already 14 years behind. Because by the time they're 2 years, if they have neurological developmental challenges, that's when they'll start showing. So if we haven't started training that doctor, then we are at a bad place. Yes.